Greenland is about to become the most fought-over piece of land on Earth, and most people have no idea why. While you are scrolling through maps thinking it's just a frozen wasteland bigger than it actually is, superpowers have been quietly positioning themselves for what might be the greatest land grab of the 21st century. By the end of this video, you'll never see Greenland the same way again, because what's hidden beneath that ice sheet could reshape global power forever. You've been looking at Greenland wrong your entire life. On most world maps, it appears massive, roughly the size of Africa, when in reality it's closer to the size of Mexico. That's the Mercator projection, playing tricks on your brain. But here's what those distorted maps accidentally got right. Greenland's importance is actually bigger than it appears. And in a moment, you'll see why every major power from the United States to China to Russia is suddenly obsessed with this Danish territory that most people forgot existed. Let's start with something wild. Greenland holds approximately 80% of the world's known reserves of rare earth elements. These aren't just rocks. They're the minerals that make your smartphone work, that power electric vehicles, that enable military defense systems. Right now, China controls roughly 90% of global rare earth production. Greenland could change that overnight. But it gets stranger, because under that ice sheet, which is melting faster than scientists predicted even 5 years ago, lies deposits of uranium, zinc, lead, and something called neodymium, a metal so valuable for magnets that it's essentially liquid gold for anyone trying to build the technology of tomorrow. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. When former President Donald Trump suggested buying Greenland in 2019, people laughed. Denmark's prime minister called the idea absurd. But Trump wasn't joking, and he wasn't the first American leader to try. The United States attempted to purchase Greenland in 1867 and again in 1946. Why? Because military strategists have known for over a century that whoever controls Greenland controls the Arctic, and whoever controls the Arctic has a chokehold on some of the most important shipping routes and military positions on the planet. Think about geography for a second. Greenland sits directly between North America and Europe, right on top of the Arctic Circle. As polar ice melts, and it is melting at terrifying speed, new shipping routes are opening up that could cut travel time between Asia and Europe by weeks. The Northwest Passage, once a frozen fantasy, is becoming navigable. Ships that used to take the long route through the Suez Canal or around Africa could soon cut straight through the Arctic Ocean, passing right by Greenland's coast. Whoever controls those waters controls trillions of dollars in trade. But wait, there's something nobody talks about. Greenland currently has a population of only 56,000 people. That's less than a small city spread across an island 836,000 square miles in size. Denmark provides Greenland with roughly $600 million in annual subsidies, which is more than half of Greenland's entire budget. The island can't sustain itself economically, at least not yet. So why doesn't Denmark just sell it? Because the moment Greenland gains independence or changes hands, Denmark loses its claim to the Arctic, its influence over one of Earth's most resource-rich regions, and its seat at the table when superpowers start carving up the North. Here's the part people miss. Greenland isn't just sitting there passively. The island has been pushing for independence from Denmark since 2009, when it gained self-rule over most domestic affairs. Full independence is the goal, but there's a massive problem. Greenland needs money. Mining rare earths requires billions in infrastructure investment. Building ports that can handle heavy shipping traffic in Arctic conditions costs a fortune. And here's where China enters the story in a way that makes Western intelligence agencies very, very nervous. China has been investing heavily in Greenland for years. Chinese companies have tried to buy abandoned naval bases, attempted to fund airport construction projects, and proposed mining operations that would give Beijing direct access to those rare earth deposits. Denmark and the United States blocked most of these deals, but not before China made its intentions crystal clear. Beijing sees Greenland as a critical piece of its Belt and Road Initiative, a way to secure resources and establish a permanent presence in the Arctic. If China gains significant influence over Greenland, it would effectively have a foothold a few hundred miles from Canada and within striking distance of American territory. Now, think about Russia. Moscow has been expanding its military presence across the Arctic, building new bases, deploying icebreaker fleets, and testing hypersonic missiles designed to fly over the North Pole. Russia views the Arctic as its backyard, and Greenland sits right in the middle of the routes those missiles would take toward North America. The Russian Northern Fleet, one of the most powerful naval forces on Earth, operates in waters that flow directly past Greenland's eastern coast. For Russia, keeping Greenland neutral or friendly is a strategic necessity. For the United States, keeping Russia away from Greenland is existential. And then there's Thule Air Base, something most Americans don't know exists. The United States maintains a permanent military installation in northwestern Greenland, established during World War II and continuously operated ever since. Thule is home to early warning radar systems that detect incoming missiles from over the North Pole. It's part of America's ballistic missile defense shield. Losing access to Thule would create a blind spot in U.S. defense infrastructure that's almost unthinkable. So when people dismissed Trump's purchase offer as absurd, military planners were probably thinking the exact opposite. They know that if Greenland ever falls under hostile influence, American national security takes a catastrophic hit. But here's the plot twist. Greenland doesn't actually want to be owned by anyone. The Inuit population, which makes up roughly 90% of the island's residents, has a long and painful history with colonialism. Denmark colonized Greenland in the 1700s, suppressed indigenous culture, and only granted the island self-rule in recent decades. The last thing Greenlanders want is to trade Danish oversight for American, Chinese, or Russian control. They want independence, they want sovereignty, and they want to benefit from their own resources. That's the moral argument. But the practical reality is brutal. Without billions in external funding, Greenland cannot develop its economy fast enough to survive on its own. So we have a standoff. Greenland wants independence. Denmark wants to keep its Arctic claim. The United States wants to prevent China or Russia from gaining influence. China wants access to rare earths and shipping routes. Russia wants strategic military positioning. Everyone wants something. And Greenland, with its tiny population and massive geography, sits in the middle holding all the cards, but lacking the chips to play the game. Let's talk about climate change, because this is where things accelerate. Greenland's ice sheet is melting 6 times faster than it was in the 1980s. Every year, the island loses approximately 280 billion tons of ice. As the ice recedes, mineral deposits that were buried for millennia are becoming reachable. Exploration companies are mapping these newly exposed areas, and what they're finding is staggering. Potential reserves worth trillions of dollars. But here's the catch. Extracting those resources requires infrastructure that doesn't exist. Building the necessary ports, roads, and processing facilities would require investment on the scale of a small nation's entire GDP. And whoever provides that investment will expect control in return. China offers funding in exchange for mining rights. The United States offers security guarantees in exchange for military access. Denmark offers subsidies in exchange for continued governance. Greenland wants all the benefits with none of the strings attached. If you enjoy these deep dives into maps and hidden geography that explain how the world actually works, consider subscribing, because there's a lot more to uncover. Now, let's address something uncomfortable. Some analysts argue that Greenland's future resembles the scramble for Africa in the 1800s. Back then, European powers carved up a continent to extract resources with little regard for indigenous populations. Today the language is more polite, but the underlying dynamic is similar. Powerful nations want what Greenland has, and Greenland's population is too small and economically fragile to resist completely. There's also a human story here that rarely gets attention. Life in Greenland is harsh. The suicide rate is among the highest in the world. Many communities are isolated, accessible only by boat or helicopter. Young people leave for education and often never return. So when we talk about Greenland's strategic value, we have to remember that real people live there, people whose lives are about to be transformed by forces beyond their control. Here's another layer. The Northwest Passage is already causing disputes. Canada claims the route passes through its territorial waters. The United States argues it's an international strait. Russia has competing claims based on Arctic shelf extensions. If Greenland becomes a major shipping hub, these disputes will escalate into potential naval confrontations and legal battles. And there's the environmental cost. Mining rare earths produces radioactive waste and poisons water supplies. Greenland's environment is fragile. adapted to extreme cold and pristine conditions. Large-scale industrial mining would devastate habitats and harm the fishing industry many Greenlanders depend on. There's real tension between economic development and environmental preservation. Let's talk military strategy one more time, because this is where it gets genuinely scary. Hypersonic missiles can travel at speeds exceeding 5 times the speed of sound, making them nearly impossible to intercept with current technology. Both Russia and China have developed these weapons, and the shortest flight path from their territories to North America goes directly over the Arctic. Greenland sits right under that flight path. Early warning systems based in Greenland could provide those precious few minutes of warning that might mean the difference between a successful defense and a catastrophic surprise attack. This isn't science fiction. Military planners are actively gaming out these scenarios right now. But what if Greenland achieves full independence and decides to stay neutral? What if the island refuses to host foreign military bases and instead declares itself a demilitarized zone? That would be Greenland's right as a sovereign nation. But it would also create a power vacuum that someone will inevitably try to fill. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does geopolitics. If American forces leave Thule, someone else will move in, whether officially or through proxies. Neutrality sounds noble in theory, but in practice, weak neutral states often become battlegrounds precisely because they lack the power to enforce their neutrality. Here's the final piece: climate refugees. As sea levels rise and extreme weather intensifies, millions will be displaced from coastal regions. Some projections suggest 1 billion climate refugees by century's end. Where do they go? Greenland, as it warms, might become one of the few places that actually becomes more habitable. The island that currently has 56,000 people might need to accommodate millions, a demographic shift that would completely transform Greenlandic society. So why might Greenland become the world's most valuable island? Because it sits at the intersection of resource scarcity, climate change, military strategy, and great power competition. It has the minerals we need for green energy and advanced technology. It controls access to the Arctic and its emerging shipping routes. It provides strategic military positioning at the roof of the world. And it's on the front lines of climate transformation that will reshape where humans can live. No other piece of land on Earth combines all these factors in quite the same way. Greenland is not just valuable, it might become indispensable. But here's what should keep you up at night. All of this is happening with almost no public debate. Most people have no idea that their governments are maneuvering for position over Greenland. Most people don't know about the rare earth deposits, or the military bases, or the shipping routes. It's all happening in the background, in classified briefings and diplomatic cables and corporate boardrooms. By the time the average person notices, the important decisions will already be made. And the people with the most to lose, the actual residents of Greenland, have the least power to determine their own future. The next decade will decide Greenland's fate. As ice continues to melt, as rare earth demands increase, as Arctic shipping becomes routine, as military tensions escalate, the pressure on this island will become unbearable. Something will have to give. Either Greenland finds a way to navigate between competing powers and achieve genuine independence, or it gets carved up by outside forces who see it as too valuable to leave in local hands. There's no middle ground that lasts. Neutrality is not an option when everyone wants what you have. So, what surprised you most about Greenland? Did you know about the rare earth deposits, the military bases, or the coming fight for Arctic control? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's discuss what you think will happen to this island over the next 10 years. If you found this deep dive valuable, hit that like button, subscribe for more hidden geography that explains how power really works, and check the link in the description for sources and further reading. Because understanding Greenland isn't just about one island, it's about understanding the entire future of global competition in a warming world, and that future is arriving faster than anyone expected.